People of Earth, it is I, the Great Goonan, and this is the Great Goonan Podcast. And today, I am talking to one of my old pals, Zolar. Zolar. You might be saying Zolar. His mother named him that? Yes, Mrs. Zolar named him Zolar, and he's actually Zolar Jr. How are you, Zolar?
I couldn't complain because I could be a lot worse off with these crazy times we're in there, Goonan.
That is true. That is true. Haven't seen you in a long time, buddy. You look pretty good, actually.
Yeah, like, really, I was going to say, like, I aged like who God knows why. I look like fucking Methuselah.
Well, Methuselah was rich.
And he lived to be like 800 years old or more, I'm sure.
Yeah. So for our audience, I want to say that Zolar is somebody who had a little prominence because for two reasons I want to point out. First, he sort of by hook or crook in his own oomph became a person who called in often to the Howard Stern show. And
frequent caller,
and through that then became on-air guest many times, and many times was on the classic Howard Stern show when it was on regular radio. And
terrestrial.
And what he also wound up doing was doing his own show on the internet, something called internet radio. What is internet radio? Well, we don't call it that anymore. We call it podcast. But long before podcasts were popular, Zolar had a show called Zolarvison. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a mishmash of variety. I would talk to the audience, have them participate, and let them steer the show. But within that realm, I would do prank phone calls that were also donated. The phone numbers were donated by the viewers. So I wasn't like providing like some phony crap. Somebody would say, my mother's car is in this mechanic, and if you'd like to call over to my mother and make believe you're the mechanic and say her car is going to cost her X amount of, and then I'd call and I'd literally like slaughter his mother by asking her about her vagina.
There you go. So that's what I was going to say. We got to know each other because I participated in many episodes of your show, Zolarvison, helping you or with prank calls or doing prank calls with you a couple of times in person, but many times over the phone. And many times either it was just me or both of us might have been under the influence and got a little crazy. And most of the material now would probably get us canceled. But it was
cancel culture, immediate cancel culture.
But it was funny. It was funny.
I'm telling you, I laughed.
And when you did, like you were saying, when you did your show, it was before anyone knew what podcasts were, and they didn't call it podcast. They called it internet radio, and you had an internet radio show, and you would have these listeners and viewers who would contact you in the chat room, like you said, and say, look, I hate my boss, so here's my boss's number. Call him up and tell him that you're a lady who is going to have his baby. And you could do a lady's voice, and you would scare them. In fact, doing a lady's voice is something you used to do on the Howard Stern show. You used to use them.
Right. Actually, that developed on the Howard Stern show originally from like Beetlejuice would be on the show, and I would call in as Katie Juice, Beetle's wife, which was a made-up fictitious wife. He didn't have a wife. So I would call in as Katie Juice, and I would complain on how he's not paying his child support, and the children are naked, and the blah, blah, and Howard would feed off of that. And then I used to call in as Howard's girlfriend named Beth after he had gotten divorced. And I'd say a lot of derogatory things as Beth. And, oh, Beth, come on, So Howard would play off of that. So it became a pretty popular thing that I did. And I brought it over to what you're calling internet radio, which is what everybody called it. I was trying to coin a phrase back then, and I was calling it a webcast. Back then, I was pioneering the name webcast, which never really completely stuck. And now you have podcasts. But I was in the realm of like being an astronaut in the space of internet entertainment. Had I been doing this now, yes, the color was way too blue for today's society. But I don't know, man. I was way before my time for making it sustainable monetarily anyway. But today, kids are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
Right. Now, I want to go through a couple of the things. How did you happen about getting on to the Howard Stern show and being a regular on there?
That's funny you should ask. The first time I had called in, it was about a guest he had on. He had on a penthouse pet called Kimberly Taylor. She was Pet of the Year. And it just so happens my friend and I used to frequent Long Island clubs where this Pet of the Year comes from. And she was in the same club as myself one night. And I went up to the manager and misrepresented myself as her manager. Then I went up to her and misrepresented myself as the club's PR person. And I made a deal between her and the club owner where she would come in and take Polaroids of herself with the crowd. And it wound up that it worked out so well and it was so beneficial, making money and, people come to the club to see her and stuff like that, that I went on a little hangout situation with her and another penthouse pet and her sister. And it was in the back of a limo and a lot of good stuff went on, a lot of nudity and stuff to report back to Howard. So I called into Howard to say, you being as rich as you are and having all of your clout being on the radio, you've never been able to get the penthouse pet Kimberly Taylor to take off her shirt. Well, what if I told you I'm a janitor and I was in the back of her limo and she got naked for me? And he was like, get out of here, you're full of crap and this and that. So Baba Booey came in and was like, well, we'll just get Kimberly on the phone right now. So they get Kimberly on the phone and they wake her up and they're like, Kimberly, we have this guy who says he was out with you on Saturday night, your limo, and you were drinking champagne and you were getting your top off. And she says, my real name is Glenn, not Zolar. It's Zolar Glenn. So she goes, Glenn, is that you, you dirty bastard? And she just legitimized everything I said in 2 seconds right there on the air.
And that was the first time you were on?
Yes. That was my first call, and it was like 1989, say. Who knows?
Wow.
I don't remember exactly the date. Yeah, and then the Zolar thing happened years later, because I called in many times before I became Zolar. Riley Martin abducted by aliens, and they uploaded all of this information about propulsion systems into his brain. Now, this guy had never graduated high school. He was a drunkard. He was everything but a vagabond. And how this man could pull this information from his head was so unlikely that it had to be real, that somebody must have uploaded this very delicate, integral information into his brain. Well, anyway, so they had him on the show. I called in as the leader of the mothership. Howard answered the phone as, hey, Zolar, the leader of the mothership. It was me, and that stuck forever.
And then henceforth you became Zolar. Now, when you called in all those times,
when you
called in all those times, that Stuttering John was the guy you had to talk to. He screened the calls, right?
Every time.
And then after a while, if he knew you and liked you, he's the one who made sure you got on, right?
Well, I'll tell you the truth on that. I would call in character and never break character. If I was calling in as a girl, I'd call in as a girl. And he would be going, Zolar, that's you, right? And I was going, Jessica. Or I would call myself Jennifer at the time or whatever. And, and so they loved that I wouldn't break character. It wasn't like I was just trying to I was nuts to them. You know what I mean? So they put me right through every time.
And when you said you won a prize that last time, you won a lot of prizes. Didn't you win like a trip to Orleans, 10 grand for something else and stuff like that? Yeah, so you were always in those contests and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was able to procure a lot of swag over the years through the show. I mean, they used to fly me when they did their live shows in Vegas. They did live shows of the Howard Stern Show from Vegas. You see me right there up front and center with a placard on that says Wack Pack. Even though I'm not a Wack Packer like Beetlejuice, I was right there next to Beetlejuice and the KKK guy and Angry Black and all of the, I was right there prominently displayed. They loved me. They always treated me nicely.
Now, when you interacted with these Wack Pack guys, what were they like in real life? Like what was Beetlejuice or the KKK guy or any of these guys like in everyday interaction?
You know what? I tell you, Howard Stern didn't bring on phonies or perpetrators of a fraud. These guys were real. I mean, that KKK guy came with bumper stickers and all kinds of stuff that, everything that would get you killed normally. You know what I mean? I mean, it said the most rude things you've ever seen, and he was real. And then they got like a high-pitch Eric, that guy is real. You know what I mean? His voice never lowers, and he's not putting it on. He's that stupid. He's a big, like Baby Huey. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And Beetlejuice. I mean, come on, look at him. He's like a pinhead or something like that, right? He's real. And I'll tell you a funny story about Beetlejuice. So I'm standing in Vegas, talking about Vegas, right? And he's about to interview Beetlejuice, and I'm standing here, and Beetlejuice is right in front of me as the camera's on, and they're talking to him on the microphone. And they say, "Come on up here, Beetlejuice," and they move the red rope away so that he could walk up to the stage. And as he passes the red rope, he was wearing a pair of shorts and sandals with no socks on. A turd falls out of his shorts. I swear to God on my mother, dude, I'm not even making this crap up. You couldn't make this crap up. A turd falls out of his shorts, down his leg, and onto the floor. And the cameraman following him steps right in, right in it. And then the microphone guy's coming, and he steps in it before everybody's like, shit on the floor. It was gross, man.
And wow, I gotta process that for a second. But and dealing
He shit
directly
his pants.
with the cast, like what was were any of the cast interact?
Well, I'll tell you, they knew what they were doing. They want to run things a certain way, and if you don't comply the way they want it, you're out. You know what I mean? They don't have no time for screwing around. But if you go with the flow with them, like one night I won a contest off of the show. Speaking of contests, they gave me a date with these two girls. They were sisters. They
I was
came on
going
the
to bring
show.
this up. This became an E episode, right, for the E channel, didn't it?
Yes. They gave me a date with the lesbian sisters. They were lesbians. They were making out and clutching each other. They sent us out to a discotheque that night, and they filmed the whole thing. It was a great episode. If you could go look it up on YouTube or whatever. But I mean, like I got along with the crew so well, and we like literally became friends and know each other's names, and it's just the most amazing thing. They are the most decent people ever, but they follow the rules of what the Howard Stern show calls for, and that's why the show is as successful as it is, because they have rule followers.
And do you still keep in touch with anyone from the show?
No, not at all, actually. Maybe Dan, the song parody man, and then Miss Howard Stern, obviously. She's always been a friend of mine, and, but nobody related to producing the show or being on the show. Yeah, it's been quite a while. Why I fell off personally, which might be one of your next questions as the great interviewer, Goonan, that you are, I'll just beat you to the punch, is I used to work in a public school, so I had to be there at 6 a.m., and that's what time the show started. So it just so happens I'm in a building with a bank of telephones until like 8 o'clock, until anybody comes into school. So I was able to get on the show left and right from my job, But now that I don't work anymore in those hours, in that time frame, I don't listen to the show live. So you can't interact with a freaking replay.
And you were talking about Miss Howard Stern, Andrea. That's how I first knew who you were on the show, because she would come on the show and you would come on with her. You were almost like her de facto manager. At least it was postured that way on the show.
Yeah. People would say I'm a leech, or I'm trying to do, through her right on her coattails, or rob her. But like, I made her the most amount of money that she's made with that name. Like any bookings that she's ever done that were realistic with a contract, I did that. You know what I mean? Because she's too dumb. Like, she couldn't handle it on her own, and people were trying to rip her off and shit like that. Like, I got her $30,000 to go live in Vegas and be paid for everything. She didn't have to pay for anything during the entire 30 days. She gets paid $1,000 a day to let them just film her on her daily doing stupidity. And then they hired me as well to be there, and then they hired King of All Blacks, and they hired I Pitch Eric. They hired us all to live in this house, and then they filmed us like Big Brother before Big Brother was even big.
And
It was live on the internet.
Was that wasn't affiliated with the Stern Show, though? That was their own thing?
No, and that was the thing. Right. This was a private entity, a production company that paid us to come and do something, hoping that the Howard Stern Show would maybe promote it and they'd be able to sell millions of copies of it. But in all actuality, the Stern Show wanted nothing to do with it and wouldn't allow it to be mentioned on the show. It's called Dopes Go Wild in Vegas, by the way. You can find it on the internet. And I star throughout the entire thing. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I made that video very funny. At one point, I'm going to just blow the best part that I think is the best part right open. You got to go look at it. King of All Blacks. You know who he is, right?
Sure.
All right. So King of All Blacks gathers all these strippers around in a circle, and he lays on the floor, and he's got a foot fetish, and he says, "Oh, you girls could step on my face and put your fucking toes in my mouth and stuff like that." So while he's fully deep into it and dreaming, his eyes are rolled back in his head, I take off my sock and I pull up my friggin' shoe like that, and I dip my toes into his mouth, Goonan, and he was sucking on my toes on camera, and he didn't even know it. When he opened his eyes and saw all the girls left and it was me standing above him, his eyes bugged out of his head like a cartoon.
Oh. Do you still keep in touch with him? Is he still affiliated with the show?
Yeah, he calls in once in a while. His name is Lawrence. He's King of All Blacks on the show. He calls in on occasion.
All right. What do you think about the all the criticism about the way the show has changed and the way Howard sort of has become PC and stuff?
Well, in all actuality, I remember Howard from back in the AM days. That's how long I've been listening. I'm an old fella. So anyway, Howard always complained about the fact that he didn't get to run in the same circles as his peers because they looked down on him for his content. And as he became more prominent in his genre, he questioned it all the more. How come at this big Kennedy funeral, this one's sitting up front and that one's sitting? There's Rush Limbaugh. Why am I not invited to this funeral? That's his thought process. You know what I mean? So he had to figure out how to get himself on level with his peers. And he was able to change from what he was to what he is today. And I admire that. You know what I mean? I do. I admire it. I don't mind that he's changed. Everybody changes. Society has changed. It's not the same world you and I used to live in the 90s, in the 80s. It's just not.
And so you were doing that, and then at what time did you decide to get your own show, internet radio show on the internet? When did that start?
I think around 2004 or so, maybe. I can't remember the exact date. I'm a burnout. I smoke a lot of pot. So some guy came to me, a young kid. He was like, "Dude, you should just do something on the internet. People will love you." And I was like what? He was like, just be there and talk. And then it evolved into what you know of it. And I enjoyed the shit out of it. And then some fucking billionaire called Alki David. He's a Greek billionaire. You look him up. He's like maybe the 16th richest person in the world. Gets in contact with me and tells me he's sick of getting kicked off of websites like Justin.tv. You remember Justin TV?
Yes.
All these broadcasting sites, I forget the name, Ustream, all of these broadcasting sites, they would kick him off because his content was, a little over the limit for their terms of services. He says, I, as a billionaire, am going to start up my own website. I got my whole thing with my servers. I built the whole thing up. I'm going to open it up. It's going to be called battlecam.com. Can you come over there? Can you come over there twice a week and do a show there? I'll give you $1,000 a week. I said, gee, 1,000 is nice, but, I don't know. He says, all right, make it 2. And I was like, you're very generous. I said, and I appreciate it, but I don't know if I could. He says, look, $5,000 and you guarantee me I'll get 600 shows a year. And I was like, I'll tell you what, 500 shows, 30 grand. And we went on and we came to a figure. And the guy started paying me. And I was like, holy shit, I'm getting paid finally. I did it. I made it. And he flew me out to Beverly Hills. Mm-hmm. And he was like, this is my place. Here's my Ferrari. Take a ride in my Ferrari, And I brought my son out there who was young. I put him in the Ferrari and stuff like that. I was balling, I figured this is great. And he was like, come up with some really cool content that will, advertise the name of my website so we could become bigger. And I was like, well, what you got to do is the president of the United States is going to be showing up at such and such a place in Philadelphia. How about you pay somebody to streak him, like $1 million to streak the president yelling battle cam, and it'll get on TV. And he was like, if you get that done, I'll give you 30,000. That guy, $1 million. And I was like, yeah, this guy's a billionaire. He's throwing around money and shit. So I literally went and I got a guy. Well, the guy actually approached me. I said it on my show. I said, I can give anybody $1 million who will streak the president yelling battlecam.com. So this guy contacted me. And then I contacted somebody who would be the videographer for that. And I put the whole thing together. And the guy streaked the president. You could look that up in Google.
W. Bush?
No, Obama.
Streaked Obama?
Yeah.
Now, what happened to that guy? He must have gotten
The
arrested.
Secret Service pummeled him and brought him to jail. What are you talking about?
Did he ever get to collect his money?
So it turns out that there was stipulations by this billionaire. He's not stupid. He wrote a contract. He said, you have to be within eyesight or earshot of the president, and you have to say battle cam at least 6 times over the airwaves. It has to come through. So the kid got on the news and did yell, battlecam.com, battlecam.com, about 6 times perfectly. But the billionaire was like, but the president didn't see him. He wasn't in eyesight. He might have been in earshot, but he missed eyesight. Yes, he got the 6 battle cams in. I'll tell you what, I'll give you $300,000 for your good effort. Take it or leave it, or sue me and never get a dime. So the guy who streaks says, give me the $300,000. The guy gave me the $10,000 that I wanted, and bing, bang, boom, that was that.
And so the guy got 300 grand?
Yeah.
How long did he spend in jail?
The night. Then the billionaire had him bailed out and all of that.
Oh, wow. Well, it's kind of worth it. Is there footage of that with Obama?
100%. Just Google it, man. Google's your friend, brother.
And it's, what would you Google? You would Google Obama streaker?
Obama streaked. What else can you
Wow,
fucking Google?
yeah,
Yes.
if I find that, I'm putting that up as a clip with this show. Okay. Wow. All right. So, but for a long time, you were doing when you were doing your internet radio show, there was a whole sort of subculture community of people on the internet who had internet radio shows, but not only internet radio shows, but prank call shows like yours also. There was a fellow that you used to know, and because of that, I knew who he was, but only through the internet, KDK. There was that fella. Remember that guy?
Oh, yeah. He killed himself.
No, I didn't know that. Really?
Committed suicide about 3 years ago.
Why? Do you know any of the details?
Well, you know, I'd hate to tell you a story that's untrue because the guy's dead and he can't confirm it. But he said to me one day, he says, get me on the Howard Stern show.
Wait a minute
And he had a boyfriend alone.
Now, wait a minute. So this is what I was going to say. So I knew KDK through your show. I never met him, but he was a prank caller like you, and you would do prank calls on the internet. But one time he wound up being on the Howard Stern show in order to have sex with the transsexual lady, Chiffon. Is that correct? Siobhan. And
Siobhan, yeah.
During, I believe it was during the Sirius satellite years and during the Howard TV years. And he actually did it. So tell me the rest of that. You were involved in that, obviously.
Well, what happened was he come to me, he says, can you get me on the Howard Stern show? I love Howard Stern. I'd love to be on the show. And I said, oh, let me think of a way. So it took me a month or so. And a guests that come on the show. There's a couple of guests that aggravate me. One of them is a guy who likes to be puked on, and you know, it just gets under my skin. And another one was this transsexual Siobhan, and Howard's been following her since the inception of her getting a sex change, right up to the point where she actually had a penis removed and a vagina built in. Now, after the vagina was built, she came on the show saying all she needs now from the Howard Stern show is to have somebody make love to her. So I called in, I said, Howard, if I get this fucking thing fucked, if I can get this thing laid, will you promise it'll be the last time it'll ever be on the show? You know, I was rude back then, you know what I mean? It's not nice, I understand. I get it now, but that's how I was. So he was like, you think you can get her laid? I'm Howard Stern, I have millions of listeners. I can't get her laid. So I call up my friend KDK and I say, listen, you want to be on a Howard Stern show? Bang this fucking transvestite sexual thing over here. It's just had a vagina built in and you can get on the show. They'll do a whole episode around it and it'll be something special. He says, okay, I'll do it. So I call back Howard. I say, I got somebody. We're going to come down and do it. He says, all right. They set up the date. Anyway, make a long story short, his long-term partner did not like the outcome of the E! show. It was horrific for him and left him.
But his partner, because he was gay, his partner was involved in it because didn't his partner have to get him hard in order for him to be ready, Siobhan? And then Siobhan just runs into the room.
Yeah, you watched that episode a little too closely, Goonan.
I remember that episode. Yes. Who the hell would forget that? And so you're saying after all that, he
after it aired, the editing was so. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was waiting for you.
Oh yeah, no. After the editing and it was aired on television or wherever it was, the partner got so upset with the way they looked and the way they came off that he left that relationship in embarrassment for himself. And KDK started to go downhill since then and never recuperated from it. Never found another life partner. His show went downhill. His whole attitude went downhill. And then he was always depressed. So I believe it was the catalyst of that Howard Stern show not turning out the way he envisioned as a dream of his to get on Howard Stern, that it was the catalyst to his downfall where he finally killed himself.
Wow, that's a sad story.
Yeah, sorry.
Now, there was another fella, I'm going to just move on. There's another fella who also was someone I just knew via your show, another prank caller guy. I never knew him in person, named Carlito. What happened to him?
Oh, another dead guy.
Yeah, what happened to him?
Passed away about 2 years ago. He had he was very heavy set. He had diabetes. He had like breathing. He passed away of bad health.
Wow. Well, this is becoming a bit of a bummer. I hate to ask the next question. The person's probably dead.
How's my mother? She's
Now, what
83.
about that other fella who, I can't remember his name, but he's another fella who used to call in and do prank calls with us, and he always was Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago.
Dr. Lego.
Dr. Lego. Where's Dr. Lego? What happened to Dr. Lego?
Dr. Lego is a very, very talented audio engineer, guitar player, all-around music creator, has made gold records for, I think it's Pat Benatar and other bands like Zebra in the past. And you could find him as Abe Froman on Facebook. He has now invented a bypass for the guitar that helps compress the sound and this and that, and he prints it out and then does all the electronics all by hand, and he sells them and stuff. But yeah, he's a wonderful person, and his daughter has just turned around like 19 years old, and she's getting into the music business. She just put out her first album, and her video is now available. If you look for, as I said, Fader, that's his name, Fader Ishmael. Fader Ishmael. Abe Froman is another alias of his. Fader Ishmael on Facebook. His daughter just put out a video of her singing and walking on the beach that he produced and shot and all that crap. But yeah, very nice.
Okay, so
not dead.
At least he's alive. Okay, good. Whooey, I was starting to get worried. And you don't do the Zolarvison internet radio prank call show anymore, do you?
No. I don't know. I'm too old to be fucking around doing that, don't you think? I mean, I'm good at it. I have a lot of fun, and I love it. And people love to watch me, but I'm just an old guy. Well, who the fuck? I shouldn't be doing stupid shit.
How long ago did you stop?
Oh, maybe 8 years ago.
Because you were doing that for a long time. And do you still have the archive of shows?
Sadly, I do not, is the short answer. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that people have on their YouTube channels that they've poached and put out there. And there's a lot of stuff out there. So if you look up Zolarvison, you'll find lots of clips from my show.
I wonder if you'll find any of ours. I have a few clips of ours, but I've since made them private because they're very, the material.
Yeah. I mean, all we needed to do was put on blackface, and somebody would have just, fucking hung us.
And I particularly would play the Reverend Billy Rubin. And
it was great.
Remember that? Holy Christ. And it was just, we went on tangents of improv with different people. I could recall a couple of really great ones. One of them is a little more of a personal situation where we called up some girl who somehow thought she knew me and thought I was her friend and you were my cousin, and she just went along with us over and over, and I was, hello, I'm Reverend Billy Rubin, and we went on and on, and that lady thought we were telling the truth, and it is one of the funniest 20 minutes, probably longer than that, of just us going on and on with that lady, saying the most outlandish things. I was singing blues and she was singing along. And
it was like, it was like you couldn't write this stuff, but it was almost like a script. Like, it went so smoothly. There was no, like bump in the road, like what's going on. It was so smooth that, yeah, it was good stuff. We used to do some really funny improv shit.
Yeah, we did a lot of stuff. I remember I do have a couple of things. Another one I like is because I'm an entertainer and a comedian and stuff like that. And you were working and doing this, but there were a lot of people who wanted to participate in your show who weren't comedians or talented, but they just wanted to prank call people. And there's one recording
Right.
I have of some dude, and a lot of people on the internet, when they would call you and want to participate in a prank, and it would be like a four-way call because I would be on the air too with you. There'd be like people giving their,
Not the easiest thing.
they would give their nicknames. And I remember one time I argued with this guy going, "That's not really your name." And he got so mad at me. But it was one of the funniest things. And all he wanted to do was call up this Mexican restaurant and say, "I'm shooting fire." Do you remember this at all?
Right.
And it was like the dumbest thing. But he was so happy to do it. And it was just such a funny thing. And we did a
Yeah,
lot.
no, you call.
We did a lot of.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep interrupting you. Keep going.
We did a lot of things where like people were like armies of people were always giving you numbers, very interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I had people working on the side.
Sometimes, and they were all over the country. You were calling people all over the country, and it was,
Yes.
and it was sometimes it's really interesting stuff. There's one I remember that I don't have the recording of, but it's one of the I don't even know if it was funny. It was just compelling. There was a fellow who was like a KKK guy or some sort of white supremacist person, and he was at a hotel at a convention of these people, and we called up as if we were like, we're going to report you, and we're the police, and he had to start apologizing for who he was and stuff like that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the social engineering that was going on was way beyond its time, man. I mean, we were like, I don't mean to make you think of a different phone call or anything, but one time I called up like a hotel. I'd call up a hotel and I'd say I was the manager at the desk. I'd get somebody in their room.
I know what you're going to say, too. Go ahead.
And, no, this one is like, I got this Asian guy, you could tell by his accent. And I said, "We're having a problem with the septic tank. The fresh water is mixing in. If you took a shower, please, let me know. Or if you drank any water, you're going to have to throw up." I had this guy throwing up in the background over the telephone because he drank some of the water thinking it might have been poisoned. It was nuts that was going on. You get arrested for that shit these days.
These days, like it was legal back then. And we were, and you were just figuring it out. We were just sitting on your couch doing it.
Yeah, man.
And people were sending you stuff, and it was hit or miss because you do something live and you got to see if someone, because the thing about prank calls is that if the person just hangs up, it's ruined.
It's over. Yeah.
Gotta keep the person going. And
see, that's the thing. The dynamic of my show was like the people who were viewing never knew beyond the wall. You know what I mean? I never brought down that wall for a long time until later on, which made them more interested in my show, because what I'm talking about when I say the wall is I had somebody remotely desktoped into my computer that would bring up a web page and show me what I'm going to talk about next. And then they would, like make the phone call from another, like we'd all be on Skype. And one guy would patch in the phone call, but he got that number from a viewer. So it would be a whole chain before it got to me even. You know what I mean? And nobody knew what it was going to be until I got on the call. They never knew if I was going to be Anita Leakin, which was I need a lickin'. Hey baby, how you? Oh my God, it was just too much. I was a black woman. I was a Chinese man. I used to do so many different voices and characters and all that stuff. But by the time
there was one time where you called a man who must have been on some sort of drugs. He was a devil worshiper, and you called up as the devil, and he believed you were the devil. You were like, "Hello, this is the devil." And he's like, "I knew you would call me." And he was totally out of his mind. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he was like, "Thank you, devil. Thank you, Satan."
Yeah, and he wasn't kidding.
No, man, there was no joking going on. Like none of this shit was a setup. None of it. It was all off the cuff. Yeah. And when you got gold, it was really a happy moment for everybody involved. All the people that put the work into getting the call onto the air, the viewers, everybody was euphoric when something would come through. You wait 10 phone calls that fucking, sucked to get one good one. But when it happened, it was like, yes.
And then eventually you had some people on that were sort of involved with Stern. Sometimes you had Eric, the midget
Oh, sure, sure.
actor, on. Johnny Fratto was on your show a bunch of times,
Oh,
wasn't
sure, sure, sure. All of them. Anyone that was on the Stern Show had access to me. I had Tabitha Stevens, who was a porn star. I had all of them. Angry Black, King of All Blacks. All anyone I wanted was at my, you know, service, whatever it is, you know, servitude. They would come on because I'm a good guy and I had fun. But it was too early in the internet years. You know, I had something going that didn't really make any money. And then as soon as I kind of stopped, everybody's making money off of it.
it? Yeah.
You know, and then I don't have no more team of workers. I don't have all of these people in the background pulling up numbers. And sometimes they would get the number from the viewer and call to make sure it answered. You know what I mean? Like, you know, make sure it was a legit number. Because sometimes people would give a number, you call it up, and the fucking FBI would answer.
Right.
They'd give you the FBI's phone number or the White House or something where like Homeland Security come looking for you for that.
Did anyone ever come look for you?
No, thank God. I got away with murder.
Well, don't say it that way. But what was I going to say? And then when Howard Stern went to Sirius, didn't he even give you an audition to possibly have one of your own shows? Didn't you get an audition?
No, actually not an audition. I mean, he put it out there for any of the whack packers. So I just threw my little shit in the tank just because I really didn't want to do it because I knew what was going on. They were paying, like, say for instance, like Richard Christie or Sal, the stockbroker. They brought them in like they were listeners like I was. They're only paying them $75,000 a year.
Yeah.
You know, of course, there's a lot of benefits of being on the show. You could book gigs and make all kinds of money on the side. But, you know, the actual pay wasn't a lot of money. I was making that at the school where I was working. You know what I mean?
A stable job. But what I was going to say, is that still basically what they're getting paid as far as you know?
Well, they get a salary. And, of course, they've gotten raises over the years. And say, for instance, you know, they're making a decent, you know, percentage more. It's still not, you know, anything near what the fucking show pulls in, you know what I mean? And they're creating the show.
It's not equal to what anyone would make on
right.
a television show that's a hit, or you know.
Right. So Shuli, who was another listener, he's now gone from the show, and he's doing like a podcast to make better money right now.
Yeah, I know he left. He just recently left and just started a podcast, but he has nothing bad to say.
Exactly.
He has nothing bad to say.
No, of course not. And not only that, but you probably sign a 10-year NDA or some shit like that. You know, after you leave a show like that, they probably got you on, you know, some kind of stifled speak thing. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter. You know, you're grateful to have been on the show. He was just a fan like I am. So why would you say anything bad? It was your decision to go work there. You know what you're walking into.
But there are people who have left badly. Stuttering John has a podcast as well, and he doesn't have anything nice to say about Howard anymore.
Yeah, well, I feel like the two of them, you know, have animosity with each other due to the fact that they started off in the early stages. And when John wanted to, you know, raise the level of his career, Howard wasn't, you know, happy to do it. You know what I mean? Be his stepping stool and stuff like that. Actually, he tried to block Jay Leno from getting John as the announcer. And I think that's where it all builds from. And of course, you know, John felt he was underpaid, and who doesn't? I mean, he virtually started out as an intern and worked himself into a job. And, you know, that's the way it goes. I imagine whatever John felt in his mind is the truth for him.
Yeah, I mean, to hear what he has to say when he was a star on the Channel 9 show and the E! Show and the Howard Stern show, he was making $20,000 a year.
That's what I was trying to tell you earlier. By the time they got the Shuli, you know, the inflation and all of that stuff, by the time they got Richard Christie and they got Sal, these guys are making $75,000 a year.
Yeah, also, by the time you got to those guys, you got guys who grew up watching him and were like proud to be there, as opposed to like people who came from the ground up who were like, "Where I helped build this, where's my piece?" You know, type of thing. And
yes.
It seems like he he just it seems, I don't know the truth, but it seems like he just let all the E-channel people go, the Doug Goodsteins and stuff like that. Like they all learned that they were fired on the air.
Well, you know what happened in that case? Now, I don't know for sure. This is my opinion only, so I could be wrong. But when Howard moved to Sirius satellite radio and they gave him $500 million, I mean, that sounds like a lot of money. Of course it does, and it is. But he then took on all the production value. Instead of having a company like K-Rock pay for this, that, and the other thing, it comes out of that $500,000 budget. So what do you want to do? You want to spend money fucking throwing an E-channel around that isn't really, you know, producing a profit, you know, or do you want to fucking miserly bank that money and just get rid of them? You know what I mean? So that's where that probably went. You know what I mean? He didn't want to come out of pocket for that.
And at the same time, though, even now, somebody's recording, filming, taping those shows because there's still
Yeah.
video of it. So they
Yeah.
probably found an easier way to do it.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, it still takes production and editing and foresight, and, you know, to get the camera's angles and stuff. You're having guests and somebody to remotely, you know, produce the show by saying, go to camera 2, take camera 3, step back, lower the mic. There's got to be somebody doing all of that stuff. So you don't throw one away for a lesser, person to do the job. You know what I mean? You get a shittier production. But, you know, yeah, those cameras are all remotely done from another area. You could just sit on your computer here in your house and just move. You could do those cameras right from your house and produce that show.
From what I hear now, since the pandemic, he moved to Florida. He's not doing the show in a studio and probably will never return to the studio.
And again, there's no reason for it because you get in the same audio as if they were in the same room in the very expensive building in Manhattan. It's not necessary anymore to pay that rent.
And but doesn't that mean, despite his criticism of podcasts, he's essentially doing a podcast now?
Oh yeah. For all his time, he's always, you know, said what a, you know, like a negative to the whole industry these podcasts were, to call them legitimate. But then he resorted to it. But again, he's an old timer, and you need to roll along with the times. And sometimes some people don't get on the bus as fast. But as long as at one point you get on the bus, you're on the bus. You know what I mean? It took him time to figure it out, but now he's realizing. And you're going to see all businesses in every aspect of our society are figuring out that brick and mortar thing doesn't need to be unless you're in production. And even that isn't necessary. You could outsource it. And everybody could be remote from their actual establishment. And that's not going to be necessary anymore. All these big, tall buildings are never going to be able to fill those office spaces the way they used to for the money that they had been charging. You know what I mean? So that's business. It's just business. And the guy is a businessman. I mean, he's been in the radio business for how long now? He's a professional. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yeah, and he's an icon no matter how you look at it. Nothing's going to lower his status or make him less of what he has or what he's become or what he ever was, for that matter. We've seen the progression, just like we've seen like humans turn from monkeys to Neanderthals to human beings, supposedly.
Your prediction, does he ever retire?
Well, no, you'll always hear from him in some aspect. He'll always keep himself, because that's just, you know, the nature of the beast. If you were to be, you know, famous and, you know, always in the spotlight and people looking for your attention, and then it all of a sudden went away, it would be a loss. It would be like an appendage is lost. So he'll be looking for that, you know, and he'll succeed. Like he was able to get on, who would think America's Got Talent? Him? You know, he's just a big, goofy looking scarecrow of a man and shit. You know, you're going to look at him on TV, but it turned out he was pretty funny. He was good. He was an asset to the show. He didn't last as long as Simon Cowell, but for the time he was on there, it was good.
And will Zolarvison ever come back?
No. I mean, like a variety show of sorts, and maybe a prank here and there if somebody was able to fund it and I was able to put together a team that would be able to do all the things that were being done in the background that the viewers never knew of. You know, like I said, you had a whole chain of command before the prank even got to my eyesight. You know what I mean? And all these people that recorded and edited after the show, the post and pre-production of the show is the most important part. I was just sitting there like some kind of fucking clown doing my jerky thing, whatever came natural, and shit was spewing from my mouth that could get you in a lot of trouble today. And I don't think it would be in my best interest to do it, because I mean, I would have all types of different people coming after me for a bevy of reasons at this point, just because I find it humorous.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
things have changed with that. And it was in a very quick period of time that it changed, because it really isn't that long ago that you and I were making prank calls on the internet. Not that long ago, if you really think about it.
I like to make believe it's so long ago that I have changed, Goonan. Can we get with the friggin' program here? Are you retarded? Oops, I called you retarded. Now you see, all these people with mentally challenged children are going to say, he used the word retarded. Cancel.
Hey, look, most of the stuff that I did when I pranked with you, I can't play for people. Like
No.
even if I had a copy, because I can remember, but I will tell you, it was some of the funniest shit. Because
Dude.
I remember one time we called up somebody from Anti-Defamation League or something like that, and they started yelling at us, and I was all fucked up, and I said, well, I want to tell you in my defense, I am not a Jew. And like just shit like that. That's funny, but only because of comedy is it funny. In reality,
it's satire. It's satire, man.
Right.
It's satire, and humanity is losing the ability to recognize satire and pointing fingers and hate at people who spew these terrible things. This is just, you can't forget where we come from, or we can go back there. We need to always remind us that there was these types of jokes. We found it funny. We had Sammy Davis Jr. dancing up there with Dean Martin and making all kinds of racist jokes back then, and it was okay.
Yeah, and growing up in Brooklyn, a lot of times different types of people became friends because they made fun of each other.
Yes, it's definitely like an introduction. It's the way you handle it that makes you say, this guy's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we've kind of said it all, Zolar. I think we've kind of covered it all for the time being.
Yes, it was a beautiful trip down memory lane with you.
And I guess
I felt as if we skipped and held hands.
You have a fishing rod back there. You're going to go fishing, I guess?
Yes. The tide is coming in and the rain has stopped. So the striped bass are going to be like this fucking big, dude. And I'm going to bag one tonight. It's going to be off the crazy meter.
Okay. All right. So now you have something to look forward to. But if you had to pick, and it doesn't have to be one of ours, and I know you said a few already, but can you pick one particular prank that you did when you were doing your prank show that always stands out? And it could not, maybe not because it's funny so much as it's just compelling, but it could be funny also.
Well, I love to do the call where we would call a random person. There was many of these calls. It was a good one that I made up. And we would call somebody and it would sound as if they were listening to a recording. And it says, thank you for your purchase of wakeupcalls.com. They thought I was a computer voice. Wakeupcall.com. Thanks you for your purchase. You are now being summoned to wake up. This costs $19.99. And press 1 if you did not. And they would be pressing one, and then I'd pass them to an operator, and then they'd be screaming that they want to get off of the list and not be charged. And then I'd say, okay, I understand. I put them on with another person, I'd have somebody else like you, and you would tell them, oh, yes, I understand. We're going to take care of you right now, sir. Instead of $200 a year, we're going to give you a 10%. No, not 10% discount. They'd scream at the time. That was the best gag we had going.
Yeah.
I thought, but there was many of them. So that one for me was my most fun because it really didn't hurt anyone. And, one time some lady said, I'm going to call the cops on you. And somehow or another, during the fucking phone call, the cops showed up. Cop gets on the phone with me. And I'm not kidding you. It was real, man. I mean, you could hear the cops pulling up and stuff. The husband must have called on the other phone, and they had me on for 15 minutes, and the cops came in that amount of time. And the cop got on the phone and said, sir, what's the problem? I said, officer, I said, can you please tell me your name and he went through the whole procedure. And I said, those people that handed you the telephone are on audio tape with me right now, and they threatened to kill me, which they did. I said, I want them arrested. The cop was forced to turn around. They're the ones who were complaining. And he says, sir, he's saying that you threatened to kill him. And then they admitted it. They were about to go to jail if I didn't stop the cop from taking them and tell him I'm not pressing charges.
Because they were so angry and they thought they were in the right that they thought admitting, yeah, I said I'd kill him would be a good thing.
Yes,
but you can't threaten somebody, right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, yeah, and he elaborated on it. He says, "Yeah," and I told him, because I said, and they're also Satan worshipers. Because I said, "Sir, don't get mad and threaten to kill me. Jesus loves you." And the guy went, "Fuck Jesus! I love Satan." And I said, "Make him admit that, sir." And then the guy did admit it. He says, "Yeah, I said it." And the cop was like appalled, man, because they were like some Bible thumpers that I called.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like it could have been anywhere. It could have been the Deep South you were calling. You called
a
lot of times.
Yeah,
you called a lot of times in the South. Sometimes when I participated with you, I didn't know, like the calls were being set up by you or by the people that were working behind the scenes with you. But I didn't know. You would just put me in something because you thought I'd be amusing. And I remember one time you had me on the phone with a prostitute, like a call girl. And I was like, I was asking, I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I want you to do this. And she goes, okay, where are you? I go, I'm in Staten Island. And she goes, Staten Island? I go, I'll pay extra for the tolls. She goes, I'm in Las Vegas. I'm like, I'll pay extra for the tolls. What do you want? I'll wait.
We used to call prostitutes all the time. We used to be like, look, I got an extra 500 if you could break my nose. Like I want you to punch me right in the fucking face. And then prostitute be like 500? Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah. It was great. I remember one night I want to go through a little more of this before we go, because there's so much stuff after. If we ever find it, if anyone who watches this has any of this material, don't release it. but
privately send it to us.
Yeah, send it to us privately. But I remember there was one St. Patrick's Day where your show fell on a St. Patrick's Day, and all we did was we kept calling up different bars. And I remember I called up this lady, or she was the one running the bar, and I was like,
the bartender.
Yeah. Do you remember this? And I was like, Happy St. Patrick's Day. She's like, Happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm like, I want to come in your face. I want to shoot my load right down your throat. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And the bar was so loud that all she heard was Happy St. Patrick's Day. So I would say these awful things and end with Happy St. Patrick's Day, and she would answer me Happy St. Patrick's Day. So I was like, I want to hit you in the head with a hammer and come inside your open wound. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And she's like, Happy St. Patrick's Day. I want to pick up your sister and beat you over the head with her. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day. It was shit like that. Was so funny.
Yeah, dude. We had I would have that. I know what bar you're talking about, because we would call that bar often, and we would have her, because it was always loud. We'd say, my daughter is there and her son is sick. We needed to come home, and she'd say, well, what's the name? Anita Lickin'. I need a licking, she would yell. The phone for you, I need a licking, whatever, or Harry Balls, whatever we made up. You know what I'm saying? Right. We make up all these ostentatious names and stuff like that. It was really cool stuff. And just almost as cool as reminiscing with you today, Goonan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. One more thing I got to remember. There was another thing you used to call the like the party line dating phone.
Oh my God, that was the best.
And you would call as a woman, or sometimes I would call as a man, and you had to leave. Or we would call under the woman's side, so we'd be sending messages to men, but I would send a message as a man, and you had to record your name, and then you had to record a message. So I remember, like, because of the recordings I would leave, people would hear, you have a call from the sexiest man alive, and his message is, I want to sex you up, and we would get messages back like, you fucking asshole, what the fuck are you doing?
Because those men paid to listen to those messages, and we were fucking up their whole accounts and shit like that. Man, we were.
That's the thing about those dating phone numbers. It's always free for women. Only men have to pay.
Right, right. Yeah, and I would call as a girl and go, "Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I like hot sex. So call me back." And then the guys would like call me back, and I would talk to them as Jennifer. I'd be like, "So tell me, baby, what do you look like?" And they would literally get into it. And some guys would go all like out telling me and banging their head on the phone and all that. And just when they're about to peak, I go, oh yeah, I'm about to come, dude. And then they'd be like, what?
Ah, the good times, the good times. All right, Zolar, it was nice reminiscing with you. Maybe one day Zolar and the Great Goonan will rise again. We will find out. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could find any of this material online, avoid it. Okay. This has been the Great Goonan Podcast, and I am talking with internet radio legend Zolar. Peace.
You're sick in the head.